is 14 people coming up with very different interpretations of the same poem. And if this was a Victorian realist poem, there would be no dispute about what the content of that painting is. Some of you thought this was trees, some of you thought it was ships, some of you thought it was smokestacks, some of you thought those were broken trees, a beach, many of you thought that it was a river. It is in fact a harbor, and that is a 4-mast clipper ship. That is a harbor with cranes. These are smokestacks, and those are fishing boats going out first thing in the morning. I know that because I know the history of the painting. But the thing about Impressionism is if it's not finished, like that one critic said, right? Who finishes it?
We do.
You do. And that's the freaking cool thing about Impressionism, right? It asks you to finish the painting. And so it involves you in creating an image or a portrait or whatever it is. So I want to tie this now to, you guys can share those too. To painting. And we're going to look at, to poetry. We're going to look at Imagist poetry. We looked at an example of that. The apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black bough, right? That was in a station at the Metro. In a station at the Metro. We looked at it on Friday by Ezra Pound. 2-line poem. That's an example of an Imagist poem. An Imagist poem is an attempt by a poet to capture a fleeting moment in time, as Andrew said earlier. And the goal of an Imagist poet, which, as it says in that first paragraph, an image is that which represents an intellectual and emotional complex in an instant of time. It is the presentation of such a complex instantaneously, which gives that sense of sudden liberation, that sense of freedom from time limits and space limits, that sense of sudden growth, which we experience in the presence of great works of art. And so the rules, according to Ezra Pound, who sort of was the father of Imagist poetry, said you must do the following 3 things. There must be a direct treatment of the subject. That is, the poem should deal directly with what's being talked about, not try to use fancy words or phrases to talk about it. 2, use no word that does not contribute to the presentation, i.e. as few words as possible. And lastly, compose in the rhythm of the musical phrase, not in the rhythm of the metronome. In other words, create new rhythms instead of relying on the old, antiquated ones from earlier periods, right? So I want to look at a poem right now, which is also on your sheet. But this is one of the most famous Imagist poems ever written. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. That's the whole poem. And so I want you to look at the 3 questions down at the bottom of the page that I just gave you. Talk about them for a few minutes, and then I want to figure out, A, what's being said here? What is this snapshot trying to tell us? What is the story of this moment in time? And then, how do we connect this to Impressionism? Okay? So take a few minutes, talk to your table mate.